Hi, Alinda. Smudgy's upstairs asleep. How are you? I'm okay. I'm alright. Yeah, I'm alright. Same old, same old. You're hungry still? Again? I had a few biscuits, that's all today. Hi, Ruthann. It's alright, I'm moving you around a minute. There you go. Yeah. How are you doing, Ruthann? Something wanna happen. Tippy tip tip. Somewhere that goes somewhere. Finally. There it goes. There it is. That's where it's been hiding. My brain's not been with it. Nobody's ever done what I want to do before. Oh, just had an idea. It's a crafting idea. But I do have something in the pipeline for the channel. Not sure which day I'm going to do this, but watch the space. We are bringing back, all I'm saying is that we are bringing back quizzing, manual way, but with a twist. That's all I'm gonna say. And I'm gonna try hopefully test that out on Monday night. Like I said, that's all I'm going to say. As well, I do kind of miss the quizzing. You know, the subject quizzes and not well. Yeah, we couldn't go. Can bring back Wheel of Fortune, but we've got the game for that. I'll play that tonight, actually, but I don't know yet. I'm just been thinking up ideas.
5 weeks ago, we brought you the story of a young man who was suffering from amnesia and living in a homeless shelter in San Diego. Thanks to you, our viewers, he now knows who he is and will soon be reunited with his family. Tonight, the dramatic conclusion to his story. And we will introduce you to this woman, also suffering from amnesia and needing your help to find out who she is. We will also examine accusations that a nurse in Texas named Ethel Nation sold dozens of babies to adoptive parents. 2 of those infants, who are now adults, would like your help to find their natural parents. And finally, with Halloween almost upon us, 2 tales of things that go bump in the night. During the Civil War, this building was an important outpost for the Union Army. Today it is a museum, and many employees believe some of the old soldiers never left. This building, an upscale restaurant known as the Moss Beach Distillery, also has a spectacular and intriguing past. Legend has it that during the Roaring Twenties, it was a hotbed for loose women, bathtub gin, racketeering, and mobsters. Over the years, eyewitnesses recount a series of strange happenings right here in the distillery. Eerie sights and sounds that, no matter how hard you try, cannot be explained. Some believe that the ghosts of the Roaring Twenties are still here today, brewing up spirited mischief to make a fascinating and chilling unsolved mystery. Moss Beach is a lonely, windswept cove which lies 20 miles south of San Francisco. The Moss Beach Distillery is perched on a bluff overlooking the cove. The restaurant's name pays homage to the building's history. During the heady days of Prohibition, it was a notorious speakeasy. In recent years, all manner of strange goings-on have been reported at the Moss Beach Distillery. Waitresses swear that cold winds swirl through the dining room when no windows or doors are open. One of the former owners claims she has seen objects fly through the air and doors locked mysteriously of their own accord. At last count, as many as 5 different ghosts have been reported lurking in and around this restaurant. I've been here all day and I haven't seen a single ghost. But over the years, a lot of other people have, or say they have. And since it's almost Halloween, the rest of us should at least try to keep an open mind. According to local legend, all this ghostly business began some 70 years ago with a beautiful lady in blue. The Roaring Twenties, flappers, fast living, illegal booze.
Hey, Eddie, tell those lunks to get the lead out.
Frank's Roadhouse, the speakeasy at Moss Beach, was a favorite jumping-off point for bootleggers.
Hey, what took you so long? Hey, you want the best to go away for? Let's get this party rolling.
Hey, Charlie, what's up?
Gentlemen, the best whiskey money can buy. Fresh off the bone.
Frank's was also the setting for a legendary love triangle.
My compliments.
The lady was beautiful. She always wore blue. The piano player had eyes only for her, but their romance was conducted in secret because the lady in blue belonged to someone else. The lovers communicated in code, a silent language in which the lift of an eyebrow spoke volumes. The lady's husband was a bootlegger, and that night she made a serious mistake. Unaware that he would soon arrive, she signaled the piano player to meet her on the beach. Moss Beach was a bootlegger's haven, isolated and sheltered under a cliff just outside the speakeasy. When the lady's husband found out she had left Frank's Roadhouse, he made his way to the cove and frantically questioned his cronies.
Son of a... Hey, Mick, keep it in the bottle.
Suddenly, the bootlegger saw his wife with a piano player and went mad with jealousy.
Oh, it's all right. That's all right. Hey, evening, Max.
Very bad move, Eddie.
Lucy, no, relax. Hey,
Do that to me.
I'm telling you, relax.
A knife flashed. A gun was drawn.
Blow your brains out.
The lady threw herself between the two men she loved.
Eddie! Oh!
When the struggle was over, the beautiful lady in blue lay lifeless, victim of her lover's dagger, or so it is said. Some will deny that she ever existed, but others will swear that her ghost haunts Moss Beach to this very day. Believers claim that just as the Blue Lady once held court inside the speakeasy, her spirit now pervades the restaurant, breathing a chill wind down the necks of women she sees as rivals. Moreover, some employees swear that she calls out their names seductively when they are all alone in the dining room.
Brian.
She's mischievous. A lot of pranks will happen, a lot of things will go on, but I don't think that any of it is malicious. I don't think that anything is supposed to be hair-raising, send you running out of a building or anything else like that. She's good. She seems to be a kind soul, nice spirit.
It just still sort of amazes me that she still is there and still playing tricks on people. You know, every time I come back and talk to someone, they give me the list of all the things that she's been doing.
When Pat and Dave Andrews owned the Moss Beach Distillery, their family lived on the ground floor. They say the Blue Lady seemed to delight in locking them out of their rooms. Pat also says that the Blue Lady liked to play other tricks, especially late at night when Pat was all alone in the restaurant office.
My checkbook lifted right off the shelf above my head and sailed around, kind of slowly around in this small room. And I just told her to put it back, and it went right back onto the shelf.
I was a total skeptic. Couldn't have been more skeptical than, it would be impossible to be more skeptical than I was. And I just didn't believe in it. And then as time went on, the things that happened, you know, totally brought me around to the point of view that it is here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It happened.
On the cliff outside the restaurant, some neighborhood children once claimed they saw the Blue Lady, but she seemed to be a very different kind of ghost. Not the playful spirit who dwelt indoors, but one with a somber demeanor, concerned for the children's safety.
Children, please listen. Go back. Go away. It's dangerous. Please. Listen. Hurry.
The housekeeper of one of the restaurant employees believes she has met the same spirit, and that it is definitely not the two-timing flapper of popular legend.
First time I see the Blue Lady is one night. I am very sick. I have cold, I have fever. Yeah, I see one person in the side in my bed.
¿Tú eres Consuelo?
Sí, yo soy Consuelo.
Quiero hablar contigo porque tú tienes algo mío.
No sé, no tengo nada tuyo.
Estoy hablando de mi música.
The mysterious Blue Lady would soon reappear, this time just after Consuela had finished showering. She claims that once again, the spirit asked for her music and then revealed her name.
Mi nombre es Alma Reed.
The name Alma Reed conjured a dim memory from Consuela's childhood. When she was 10 years old, Consuela's father had given her sheet music written by one of his close friends, Ricardo Palmarin, a famous Mexican musician. The song was titled Peregrina. It was dedicated to Ricardo's beloved. Her name was Alma Reed. According to Consuela, Alma Reed and Ricardo Palmarin were star-crossed lovers. Alma was already married to another man when she fell in love with a handsome musician. Legend has it that in 1927, she walked into the sea, preferring death to life without her beloved Ricardo. Some say she drowned herself off the Northern California coast, not far from Moss Beach.
I became involved with the Blue Lady.
Sylvia Brown has a national reputation as a psychic. She has worked with the police on many unsolved criminal cases. In 1992, the owner of the Moss Beach Distillery asked her to find out just who the Blue Lady was.
And I said, oh, I have more things to do than to go ghost chasing. But I said, what the heck? So after I got up here, I walked in and said, oh my God, there is a ghost here. And I'm getting the name Mary Ann or Mary Ellen Morley. And she seems to be swathed all in sort of like a hat, blue.
The restaurant employees were surprised when Sylvia came up with a totally new identity for the Blue Lady.
Maybe I'd say 26, maybe 27.
Sylvia went on to say that Mary Ellen Morley had been killed by crushing blows to the chest and head.
But her demeanor seems...
We took that information, went over to the San Mateo County Vital Statistics and researched documentation between 1910 and 1930, and in fact came up with a name that Sylvia Brown had mentioned during dinner, Mary Ellen Morley.
Oh my God, Jennifer, look at this.
What'd you get? Oh, you're kidding. This is Fred W. Morley.
Jennifer Towner and Jan Mucklestone, another restaurant employee, dug through the archives and made an eerie discovery. Mary Ellen Morley's maiden name was Reed, and in an astounding coincidence, she had a sister named Alma.
This is all checking out. This is just incredible.
Jennifer and Jan were also intrigued by the newspaper accounts of Mary Ellen Morley's death.
She's also known as Maisie Reed.
When she was killed, it made front page news in the Redwood City Standard as well as the Times Gazette, and so it was really chilling when I came upon that, because all of a sudden she became very real.
Mary Ellen Morley lived in Redwood City, California, near the San Francisco Bay. On the day of her death, Mary Ellen and her husband Frederick had driven north to visit her mother's grave. The cemetery was 15 miles from the Moss Beach Distillery. Returning home on the Bayshore Highway that same night, Frederick lost control of his automobile. It overturned, and Mary Ellen was trapped in the wreckage.
Laura. The car. It's heavy. Get it off me, please. I'll get you out. Okay.
With her last breath, she asked Frederick to take care of their 3-year-old son, Jack.
Jack, for me.
When Frederick Morley heard a car, he frantically ran for help. But in the end, he could do nothing to save his wife. The injuries she suffered were crushing blows to the chest and head, the exact injuries described by Sylvia Brown.
You say that you're very tired.
The owner of the distillery called Sylvia Brown back to the restaurant for a seance.
Because you've been walking so long. So cold, so tired.
Sylvia claimed that Mary Ellen Morley's spirit was weary from searching for Jack, her son.
Hannah Elder.
Incredibly, Sylvia also says she saw 3 other spirits with Mary Ellen. A beautiful blonde named Anna Philbrick, her dashing lover, John Cantina, and Hannah Elder, a Mennonite woman. As the seance came to an end, Sylvia said Mary Ellen warned there would soon be a fire at the restaurant.
Concerned. Is that what you're saying, Mary Ellen?
4 or 5 days later, after this, we had a fire here in the restaurant. We had to close the restaurant temporarily. And that was really eerie. That was kind of scary.
I've moved from a 1 on a scale of 10 of belief to somewhere in the neighborhood of an 8, I would say, and a 10 with regard to my Blue Lady. I'm convinced she's here.
Does the spirit of a beautiful Blue Lady really haunt the Moss Beach Distillery? If so, who could she be? Most people now believe she is Mary Ellen Morley, the young mother who died in a tragic car accident. Others swear that the Blue Lady is Alma Reed, the ill-fated lover of Ricardo Palmerin. A few still hold with the original legend of the beautiful flapper who romanced a piano player at Frank's Roadhouse. Perhaps all 3 women haunt Moss Beach. Perhaps the Moss Beach Distillery is not only a watering hole for humans, but a gathering place for spirits as well. When we return, a tale of a haunting from a different era. Some say the spirits from a civil war have taken up residence in the Drum Barracks Museum. On April 12, 1861, the first tragic shots of the American Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Over the next 4 years, the battle raged along a 1,000-mile front. Though most of the fighting took place in the southern states, the Union war effort eventually spread across the country, all the way to Wilmington, California. In 1862, a military installation was established on 60 acres overlooking Los Angeles Harbor. Christened the Drum Barracks after an obscure lieutenant colonel, the facility was a key center for training and processing troops. By the end of the war, nearly half of California's 17,000 Union volunteers had passed through the barracks. Today, all that remains of the outpost is a single building which now houses a modest museum and some very unlikely tour guides.
I don't call them ghosts, or I don't call them hauntings usually. What I do believe in is we call them spirits.
It's a comfortable feeling. They don't bother me, and I'm very comfortable here with them.
You can lock the rooms. At night, I do. I make a check, in fact, very religiously. I check all the rooms. They're locked, the lights are off, the shades are down. And you come here at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the light in the parlor jolly well might be on, and then again it might not, but the shades may be up.
In 1986, Marge O'Brien was hired to revitalize the Drum Barracks. The museum had fallen into disrepair, despite being declared a historic landmark in 1963.
It was very dark, very sad feeling as you walk through. And it was just kind of a building, just kind of standing here saying, help me.
Over the next few months, Marge and a team of craftsmen and volunteers worked diligently to overhaul the museum. The officers' lounge was faithfully restored and new displays were installed. The old building was coming back to life, in more ways than one.
I'm sitting in my office doing the proverbial paperwork, and something will take my attention. Either a window will rattle, the roses will hit against the window, the wind possibly, but something attracts me to the fact that I should be checking something. And I will walk over to the parlor. 9 chances out of 10 when I have this feeling and I open the door, more likely than not, the lights on the table are on. Most times, I will walk up the stairs and check the gun room. Very often, that too has the lights on and the window blinds open, even though they have been closed and down. Because the rule here is that after every tour, you pull the shades down, turn off the light, and lock the door.
Never thought much about ghosts. I've never inquired about it, never tried to speak to the dead, never got involved. Even when I first came here, I took it very lightly.
Forrest Neal was always a skeptic when it came to ghosts and the like, until the summer of 1989.
It was on a Monday morning, museum being closed. I'm here by myself. And I heard someone walking in one of the hallways. As it continued, I walked out of my door looking down the stairway. I proceeded down, knowing that someone was probably in the gift shop hiding, waiting for me to leave. As I went in the gift shop, no one. When I opened the bathroom, I expected for something to happen. And there was no one in the bathroom. And since then, I've become pretty much a believer.
We were up there in the gun room, cleaning, dusting. My group.
Yasmin works with volunteer groups who assist in the museum's upkeep. In 1991, she too began to believe that the drum barracks might in fact be haunted.
I think we're done for the day. Let's go. I put down the blinds and turned off the light and locked the room and left. Came downstairs and left the building. There was nobody around.
You will be back Friday, won't you?
Yeah, sure. What time?
10:30. The silver needs polishing.
Okay, we'll do that. When I looked up, I saw the blind and the window that we were working went up really slow. Did you just see that?
What?
The blind went up by itself. It gave me the impression as if someone was holding it, someone was doing it.
To me, a ghost was like Casper the Friendly Ghost or some movie or something, I guess, one doesn't believe it until they actually are really convinced.
Fred Duran is an exterminator for the city of Los Angeles, and the museum is among his regular stops. On one visit in particular, Fred got all the convincing he needed.
As I got into the kitchen that morning, I heard some footsteps behind me, and I thought it was the caretaker.
I need to get some water.
Yeah. And I didn't pay any attention to it.
Have you seen Maria?
No, I haven't seen her.
As I turned around, there was this guy there, and I thought it was kind of odd because he was in a Civil War outfit, and I thought it was the caretaker that lived there. So as I was going out towards, the front of the building to go out towards my vehicle, and then I saw the caretaker there and the workmen also, and I just asked him, I said, hey, the guy that lives here takes his job seriously. And they said, you saw the captain's ghost. And I said, oh, come on, guys. And they said, no, you actually saw the captain's ghost.
If Fred said he saw it, he saw it. I have no doubts in that. Fred's a very honest man. My reaction is, I wonder why, at this point, what the reason was at this point in time, why he had to come now, and why to Fred. This was the hallway I was talking about, Barbara.
Marge O'Brien became determined to find out who or what had taken up residence in the drum barracks. In 1991, she asked Barbara Connor, an internationally recognized psychic, to visit the museum.
Oh, this is the parlor. Oh.
She says, we seem to have some creaks and groans, and I thought, right away, mentally, I thought to myself, oh, it's an old house, it's just settling. And I said, well, I've never done it before, but sure, I'd like to come out. So we came out and started to go through the barracks.
Here, often when I come in, the light is on,
According to Barbara Connor, the drum barracks was teeming with ghostly activity. In the officers' lounge, she claims to have encountered several spirits. 2 were playing cards. Another stood by the window, peering through the curtains. But one phantom seemed more forceful than the rest.
He looked at me, and he says, I want this chair closer to the fireplace because I'm cold. And I was telling Marge, I said, this gentleman that's sitting in this chair here has a foot that is, his boot is too tight for him.
What was interesting is my research showed that Colonel Curtis, who was the commander here the longest, had frostbitten his left foot when he was fighting Indians up in Washington. Right around the ankle, above where the nerve endings were, was a great deal of pain, which he suffered much of his life. He would wear a boot that was a size smaller so that he could have more control of that foot, and he dragged it. There is no way Barbara could have known that when she walked into the room. I had just started to uncover this research.
Upstairs, Barbara Connor continued to have visions which seemed to explain some of the strange noises Marge and the staff had grown familiar with.
There's a little boy sitting here. He's bouncing the ball back and forth. I told Marge, I said, there's a little boy here, and he's throwing the ball up against the wall. And she goes, that's what that is. And I go, what? She says, well, we've heard this thump, 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 and we couldn't figure out what it is. And I said, well, that's it. He's throwing this ball up against the wall. And I said, if you want him to stop, just tell him to stop, and he'll stop.
Now I'd like to take you into the storage room. I don't often...
As the tour came to an end, Barbara Connor says she saw the specters of Colonel Curtis and his officers in a planning session.
The colonel was standing there at the table, and when we came in, he looked at us. Then all of a sudden, he started looking at a box over on the side, like he left what he was doing and went over and started digging in this box, and he turned to me and mentally projected he wants his award. He wants the award. He's trying to find an award. And I said, what award? And he says, I have an award. I want my award, and I want it on that wall.
Well, I had never heard of a plaque before, and I don't remember anything ever hanging in that storage room. But I discovered later that when he left Washington, that Colonel Curtis did receive an award for his work with the Indians up there. And possibly that could have been the plaque.
Commander Curtis, gentlemen, it's time to go home. Lights out. If you want them back on, that's fine with me. I believe that there's something here. People ask me, have I seen it? No, I haven't seen it, and apparently they don't talk to me. And if I'm wrong in talking to spirits, well, then I'm wrong, because I do. I've become accustomed to them.
I'm pleased that they're here, if indeed they are, because it means someone with a longer span here is going to take care of this place, and it will be taken care of.
Do the long-dead spirits of the Civil War still roam the drum barracks? At this point, the museum staff has little doubt. Skeptics might say they have overactive imaginations, or perhaps a fanatic reverence for the past. But those who've experienced the unguided tour of the museum believe it is nothing less than a case of living history. When we return, a young man and woman sold as infants by a nurse in Texas are searching for their natural mothers. These 3 infants were all born in San Antonio, Texas between 1959 and 1966. What they have in common is a connection to an opportunistic woman. A woman who, according to some, ran a secret but profitable business in which she sold babies for more than 20 years. That questionable enterprise first came to light when the mother of this infant began looking for her. In November of 1959, 18-year-old Eileen Zolikoff was alone, scared, and 7 months pregnant. she was taken in by a nurse in San Antonio named Ethel Nation. On January 6, 1960, Dylene gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Almost immediately, Ethel whisked the infant away.
Ethel stole my baby. And I searched, I tried everything in San Antonio. I talked to a lawyer. Ethel wouldn't help me. I just couldn't find my baby.
Ethel Nation always denied that she had anything to do with the disappearance of Dylene's baby. But in 1968, Dylene found a photograph of her daughter in Ethel's house. It took another 15 years of searching before Dylene and her daughter were reunited on national television.
When I first saw my daughter, she looked beautiful. And she smiled. And I was just overjoyed. It was so beautiful to finally, after all these years, I finally found her.
While the story of Dylene Zalikoff and her daughter has a happy ending, the stories of two other young people who were sold by Ethel Nation are far from over. Perhaps someone in our audience tonight can help unlock the secrets of their past. Scott Mers was born in San Antonio in 1965. His adoptive parents were unable to have children and paid Ethel Nation $1,200 for Scott. Scott grew up knowing he had been adopted. When he was 10, he began to have an odd recurring dream which seemed to be about the mother he never knew and perhaps the place where he was born.
I remember walking through the main doorway. I remember feeling very cold in this place. I felt like very, very horrible things went on there. There was a table, and beside this table, there was a man in a green robe and a lady dressed in white. I don't know what they were doing there. When I woke up almost screaming. I mean, I was really, really scared.
He said, I was born in that room. I was born in that room. And he said, I feel like my birth mother was having a rough time in her life, and for some reason, I felt very drawn to her, almost like she was calling me.
When Scott was 18, he and his adopted mother, Mary, began an intensive search for his natural mother. Scott's adoption records reveal few clues, so he and Mary paid a visit to Ethel Nation.
She seemed really nice. She seemed like she wanted to help. Then, as the times grew on, it got worse and worse and worse.
Miss Nation, I just need to ask you a few more questions.
Scott and Mary visited Ethel on 6 occasions. With each visit, Ethel changed her story. At various times, she told Scott he had been born in 3 different hospitals, but none of them had his birth records on file.
They have no record of my being born there.
Who said anything about Santa Rosa?
You did.
You must be mistaken. I never mentioned Santa Rosa.
You most certainly did. The last time we came, you told Scotty he had been born at Santa Rosa. I sat right here when you said it.
On the final visit, Ethel became angry and revealed what she said was the bitter truth about Scott's mother.
Your mother didn't want you. Your mother had an abortion. Your mother was a slut. Your mother was a whore. And you want to know why she didn't have the abortion? Because it was too late.
She told me that I was a bastard child, that all my mother was a slut, a whore, and that I should have no right to even look for her. So for me to go home and for me to stop looking for her.
Scott and Mary refused to give up. They decided to visit yet another place where Ethel said Scott had been born. A community health center that in 1965 was known as the Woodlawn Clinic.
This is my son, Scotty.
The very minute that we walked in, I was completely stunned. I couldn't even talk.
This is it.
The feelings that I got from this were just incredible. I mean, it was very of a morbid type feeling, but yet I felt like I had been there before. And everything that in this dream that I had back when I was 10 was coming true before my eyes.
I was scared to death. He held on to me. I held on to him. We both cried all the way down the hall.
I was so happy that it made sense of the dream that I had many years ago.
Sadly, Scott Mers has still not found his natural mother. But through his search, he met a young woman who had a remarkably similar experience with Ethel Nation. Dawnette Barker was adopted in July of 1966 by a childless couple from San Antonio. As a last desperate resort, they had approached Ethel Nation after years of trying to adopt through state agencies. Dawnette learned that on the night she was adopted, her parents had to choose between her and 2 other infants.
We have these 2 little boys here that are twins, and this little girl over here. Now, of course, you have your choice, but I would prefer that the boys be kept together if that's at all possible.
There were bassinets in there with children. I think there were 2 twin boys and myself. My parents didn't, because they didn't expect that things would happen so quickly, they just thought they were going to go to see the baby, but at that point, Mrs. Nations told my parents that they could go ahead and take me home that night.
We can?
Yes, absolutely. Honey, is there a problem?
Well, ma'am, we don't have the full 1,700.
I thought that had been settled.
Well, ma'am, we just didn't think we'd be able to take her tonight.
Do you have some kind of property? Do you have anything that you can sell?
How about the boat?
What kind of boat? It's all right. We'll work something out.
As payment for Dawnette, Ethel Nation accepted a 14-foot ski boat worth $1,700.
You can go ahead and take your baby home.
When she turned 18, Dawnette began to search for her natural parents. She found that her mother's name was listed as Gloria Cantu. The adoption papers had been notarized by Ethel Nation.
What can I do for you this time?
Dawnette spoke with Ethel Nation several times and was finally told the same story as Scott Mers.
Your mother was a tramp. She didn't want you. She went there to have an abortion, but it was just too late to have one.
I don't understand what's happening.
I told you you shouldn't have been messing around with something like this. You should have left well enough alone.
I really couldn't understand why, or how she could say that. It hurt.
There is no way of knowing how many babies were sold by Ethel Nation, who died in 1991. Scott Mers and Dawnette Barker now suspect that there may be dozens of other young people who, like them, will not be able to rest until they are reunited with their natural mothers. Scott Mers was born on August 5, 1965 in San Antonio, Texas. His mother's name was listed as Joyce Collier. She may have been 22 years old. Scott's adoptive mother, Mary, met her once and recalls that she was thin with dark hair and an olive complexion.
It's important for me to find her because there's a certain gap, a certain hole that's inside me that I want to fill. And I think the only way that I can fill this hole is to be whole myself. And finding my birth mother will do that.
If she's out there and she is watching, you know, I just want her to know that I don't want anything from her, and above all, I don't want to hurt her, or, you know, maybe it's something she's never told anyone, or who she's currently married to if she's married, but I don't want anything, no strings attached. I just want to know what happened and how it happened. I would never in any way want to hurt her.
It is
Dawnette Barker's birthday is listed as July 21st, 1966, but she may have been born weeks earlier. Her mother, Gloria Cantu, may have been 23 years old when Dawnette was born. Both Scott Mers and Dawnette Barker Lucier may have been born in the Woodlawn Clinic in San Antonio, Texas.
Listening to it, really.
On the night of our broadcast, several viewers called our telecenter on behalf of Donette's birth mother, Gloria Cantu Martinez of San Antonio, Texas. A short time later, Donette spoke to her mother for the very first time and learned that Gloria had never intended to give her up, but had been tricked into signing the adoption papers. Donette was overjoyed to discover that Gloria wanted to see her as soon as possible. On November 9th, 1992, Gloria flew to Washington, D.C. for a tearful reunion with Donette. For mother and daughter, it was an emotional end to 26 years of painful separation.
When I was waiting for her to come out from the plane, a million things were going through my mind. Just relief that it was over, that I was finally where I wanted to be after a long time of looking.
I just couldn't believe it. That it was finally gonna happen. What I always wanted. I've always wanted her. Find her and wondered what she was like. If she was married, if she had any children.
The reunion was made even more special when Gloria met her 4 grandchildren for the first time. Donette's dream of having her entire family together had finally come true.
This is Michael. How are you? This is Tyler.
Next, a woman stricken with amnesia needs your help in tonight's special alert. Last month, we aired the story of a young man in San Diego, California, who had no idea who he was or where he had come from. In May of 1992, he had wandered into a local homeless shelter, apparently suffering from complete and total amnesia. Doctors were baffled by his memory loss. The only clue to his identity was a Boston Library card which bore the name Pierre April.
Oh dear. You've nearly done it.
Update. On the night of our broadcast, a viewer in Canada called our telecenter to say that the young man had once worked for his wife and that his name is, in fact, Pierre April. Pierre soon learned that he has 2 sisters and that his parents live in Lachine, Canada, where his father practices medicine. The next day, they spoke on the phone for the first time in more than 5 months.
It was a very emotional moment. And then I even had to tell him that I couldn't even trust him 100%, that I wanted a package with family pictures in it, and with my birth certificate in it, and anything else he could think of. And he said, okay, we'll send that to you. And then he said, do you remember your mom? And I said, no. And she was listening on the extension, and she burst into tears.
A few days later, the packet arrived. Pierre sat down with his fiancée, whom he met in San Diego, and a friend, to get reacquainted with his past.
It is strange to be told who you are and what you did. I'm someone again. And for quite a few months, I was nobody and nothing.
Shortly after Pierre's story aired, we were contacted by authorities in Richardson, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, about another unusual case of amnesia involving a woman who calls herself
How you doing, Rocket? I hope you're alright.
Like there's a wall across my brain and it won't let me see the other side. Occasionally a snapshot comes through and I get a glimpse of a life before, but nothing solid, nothing concrete.
On May 14th, 1992, Sandra fainted in a Dallas area bus station and was transported to a local hospital. She seemed to be suffering from total amnesia, and the police were notified.
I did receive numerous phone calls from around the United States, from law enforcement agencies and citizens in general, thinking that they may know who Sandra actually is. We did follow up on all of the phone calls we received, and we're not able to determine who she actually is.
This photograph was taken the day Sandra was found.
Yeah,
Initially,
doing all right,
she could not
Rocket.
remember her name, and she
I've
is
just been
still
playing
not
on a
sure
game,
that
that's
she
all.
truly is Sandra Evans.
And ordering you some stuff, Anna.
In fact, the tag on the
Ram
luggage she was
cooler
carrying
covers.
had the name
Before
Linda
they
Kennedy on it. Sandra says the handwriting is hers, but is certain the name is not.
Pretty stupid, wasn't it?
The strongest
bought
clues
two
of Sandra's identity
together.
are several photographs found in the luggage.
In a
There is
twin
one of
pack.
Sandra as a bride.
It worked out dear with the
Another
time
shows
and
two young
individually.
children. And
Because
finally, a
of the tax
picture of
on
a
it.
teenage girl, which
If
appears
you
to
buy
be a
both
high
together,
school
it's one lump
graduation
sum, innit?
portrait.
Yeah.
So it slapped more tax
They
on it.
troubled me.
So I bought them individually and paid the
I
tax
didn't want
separately,
to
and it
deal
was
with the
less.
thought if they could be my
So instead of
children. It was
£16,
much
they only paid
easier
13.
to believe they could be nieces and nephews, because the thought of them being mine and not
Still a
knowing
hell of
where
a
they
lot cheaper
are,
than here, because
not
they're
knowing
25
who they
about
are,
£20
not
a
knowing
pop, aren't they?
what conditions were that they were in,
They're ordering more
was
junk.
too upsetting.
At this point, Sandra believes her amnesia is a result of some traumatic, perhaps violent
sort out an
experience,
MBME drive
and she
next.
is haunted by a vague fear of both her past and her future.
I am afraid of what
Like the other one
I'm going
that
to
picks
find
up.
on the other side, because something made me forget it. I am afraid that if I've had children, that they won't understand where I've been for the last 5 months. That if my mother must be elderly if this is doing something to her.
Update. Just moments after this story aired in Canada, a viewer contacted authorities there and identified Sandra Evans as her sister Carol Ann Rozak of London, Ontario. Carol Ann soon learned that she is divorced and that the photographs found in her luggage were of her 2 sons, now teenagers, and her 13-year-old daughter.
When I talked to my daughter, I asked her about things that we had done, and she said we did everything together. She said we were real
You
close.
just try 'em all.
In fact, the first time I talked to her, it was more like she was the mother and I was the daughter. She was so
Oh, that's so
sweet.
close to fitting, look.
She was so excited to talk to me.
Even though the information about her past did nothing to jog her memory,
Only a
Carol
bit,
Ann
eh?
immediately began packing to return to Canada, where her children, her 4 sisters, and her
Something
brother
similar
would be
shape
waiting.
to that.
On October 30th, 1992, a nervous Carol Ann, accompanied by friends she had
That's
made in
not it.
Texas, arrived at the Dallas
No,
airport to
that's
board a
not
flight
it.
that would take her back to her family 6 months after she disappeared.
Oh yes, I'm happy to go home. A little nervous.
Still not
a
get the
little
card you
nervous,
guys
but
sent
I'm
me
happy
by
to be
mail.
going home.
You still not got your card?
Today, Carol Ann lives with her daughter in Milton, Ontario. She still has no idea what
Posted
caused her
out.
amnesia,
You went out with a
but
friend
is
and the
currently
friend's got
undergoing
hers.
therapy in the hope that someday she will fully recover her memory.
Even picked it especially.
Yeah.
Join me next time. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
You got the receipt for it? You should have done.
Postal stroke.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it.
Yeah. You'll get it, don't worry, Rocket.
It'll turn up.
Mm.
This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated
See,
in
that's
recreating
thing,
the
that's why I've
events.
been ordering
What
from
you are
China,
about to
'cause I'm
see is
getting
not
the
a
same
news
product
broadcast.
to what I would have bought here, but it takes 4 days longer. Well, sometimes
By his own admission, Stephen Michalak is an ordinary man who leads an ordinary life.
Plus I'm saving
But in
a
1967, Michalak claims that his life was
Paying
turned
UK
upside
prices.
down when he had an extraordinary encounter with a mysterious flying craft. For many years, A.J. Bro was a fixture in the small community of Houma, Louisiana. Then suddenly in 1991, he simply vanished. A mysterious
be
note
Christmas.
sent to the police suggested that he had accidentally killed himself while drinking. But at least 3 eyewitnesses are positive they saw Bro in the weeks after he disappeared. California's Frontera Prison is one of the largest women's penitentiaries in America. But over the past decade, the deaths of a prison guard and an inmate have led to controversial allegations of corruption inside the prison walls.
It's a nice card.
Join me for these intriguing stories and a heartwarming update on another edition of Unsolved Mysteries. Every year, there are thousands of reports of unidentified flying objects. As a rule, people who admit to having an encounter with a UFO open themselves to ridicule and derision. Some will call them crazy. Others will openly accuse them of concocting a hoax. In this story, the person involved is a simple, unassuming man who was always skeptical about UFOs until he had his own close encounter. Stephen Michalak and his wife came to Manitoba, Canada from Poland after the Second World War. Stephen found work as an industrial mechanic in a cement plant, and life was happy and uneventful for nearly 20 years.
He'd probably be a big
Stephen was
backlog
an
as a
amateur
driver.
rockhound who spent every spare moment in the beautiful natural woodlands of Manitoba.
I love nature, I love birds, animals.
You may have gone a bit wrong.
And also I have interest in nature, so rocks and this and that. Every weekend, in the long weekend, I usually travel, go to the
There you
out
go.
in the country and
Stuck
snooping
a bit in for
in
you.
the rocks.
On May 20th, 1967, Stephen was prospecting approximately 100 miles east of Winnipeg. Suddenly, he was distracted when a flock of geese in the pond below kicked up an unusual racket.
Looking on the tree, I notice two cigarette-like shape things with the hump in the middle. I said, what the hell is that? One stay in the air, and the other one is coming down, down, down. I start looking for marks. I never see anywhere or NASA or something written on it, no. Nothing, I didn't see anything on it. But still I was thinking that probably experimenting vehicle from the United
UFO
States.
sighting in Canada episode.
Stephen Michalak says
Is
that
it?
he made this sketch of the strange
Oh,
craft
I'm
just
not.
after he saw it land.
I do remember one description that he gave at the time. He said that the skin of the craft, the outside of the craft, was flawless.
Stan Michalak was 10 years old in 1967.
Nothing. It was as though you had milled out of a solid block of steel this disc, this saucer with the dome on top.
Stephen Michalak told his son that after a few moments, the door of the craft slowly opened.
Them stories.
When the gate opened, there was a giri, kind of shrieky talk like a kids in problem or something. Thinking of USA, I said, okay, Yankee boys.
Hey, Yankee boy.
Seems to me you are in trouble.
Yankee boy. You got troubles, I'll help you.
When his English received no response, Stephen tried Russian,
Ja wam pomogу.
then Polish,
Ну, выходите, пожалуйста. Я помогу вам. Пожалуйста.
and finally German.
Deutsch? Sprechen Sie Deutsch vielleicht? Kommen Sie heraus, ich werde helfen Ihnen.
I
Bitte.
found another bit.
Kommen Sie heraus.
Nearly done it.
Ich werde helfen Ihnen.
Stephen says that as he drew nearer the door, the light was so bright he had to snap down the visor on his safety goggles. After a few moments, the door suddenly shut.
Yeah, another bit. You nearly got this done.
According to Stephen, the craft rotated counterclockwise, knocking him backwards and setting his shirt on fire.
After igniting with the fire, the craft lifts up 30 to 40 feet and vanishes. And then I decided, I said, now is the time for me to buzz off from here, go out. So I started going.
He started feeling strange and threw up several times. At the same time, he was experiencing spots in front of his eyes, which could be after effects from the brilliant lights emanating from what appeared to be ducts or ports in the top of the alleged craft.
When Stephen checked his compass, trying to find his way southeast to the road, he says the needle went haywire. Disoriented and badly burned, Stephen took his best guess at the direction. 9 hours later, he finally arrived back home in Winnipeg, where his story made local headlines and apparently left doctors baffled.
At that point in time, the diagnosis, if you can call it that, was burns. And sure, they were burns, yes. Heat caused burns. What they couldn't diagnose and didn't have a clue about was what appeared below the chest, on the abdomen. The exact same pattern of holes that was on the grid on the side of the craft, in the same order, in the same rows, in the same number, appeared as red spots on his lower abdomen, red dots.
Stephen was released from the hospital, but he says his symptoms worsened. The nausea continued, and his body seemed to emit a sulfuric stench.
There was this sulfur ozone electric burning motor stink about him. It's like he's carrying an aura of this smell. Wherever you walked and he got close to you, you could smell this. Not baths, showers wouldn't take it out. That lasted for weeks. I remember seeing him in bed constantly. Tired, nauseous, headachy, not feeling well, losing a lot of weight.
Stephen Michalak was tested for radiation poisoning. The results were negative, yet no one could explain the source of the strange burns on his torso.
The physicians were actually unable to determine many of Michalak's ailments. They knew, for example, he was physically thermally burned. His chest was burned and singed. But the pattern lower down on his chest was very, very unusual. It was eventually determined that it was a chemical burn, not a radiation burn, although he did have some symptoms that might have suggested to some people that some sort of radiation effects might have been involved.
On June 30th, 6 weeks after the encounter, Stephen and a friend went looking for the site.
One more bit. For that.
Bob, come!
After several hours, they found a burned-out circle with a radius of more than 15 feet.
This is it. I knew it. I told you.
On this barren patch of rock was a circular, roughly circular ring of vegetation, dead pine needles, dirt, leaves, that sort of thing. The rock had been swept clean except for this ring which was surrounding this area. They also noticed that a few of the trees appeared to have dead branches, as if something had either come in and touched them or brushed by them with an intense heat or some other effects.
Not filling that hole. You've nearly frigging finished it.
Within days, a team of experts from the United States, working in cooperation with the Royal Canadian Air Force, converged on the site.
No.
They took measurements, cataloged soil samples, and checked for radiation. The levels appeared alarmingly high, and the health department considered quarantining the area. Later, however, they discovered that the high levels were caused by a vein of radium which ran under the entire region.
This is my colleague, Dr. Shaw. I don't know, to be honest, Rocket. I'm just not really...
Meanwhile, Stephen's burns, which had appeared to be healing, suddenly flared up again.
Examine these burns.
Yeah.
According to Stephen, his doctors remained mystified.
They know more about space than
After
what's in
every
the
3
ocean.
months, my burns from legs and here were coming back, showing up
But the
again
thing
and
is,
burning. And burning and
yes,
vomiting.
I believe in
Anything I eat, bingo, goes.
Oh, I don't believe in
To
any of
this
that
day,
nonsense.
You can, if you let you, can press into his skin and feel subcutaneous scar tissue.
And what was I watching
in the
last
form of
night?
those
Ghost stories.
burns on his chest, which he playfully calls his buttons.
Do it on purpose
it's
to
there.
wind you
You
up.
cannot
No, I
deny
don't
this.
believe
This
in
is
that
there.
rubbish.
I don't believe
Let
in
them
that
watch it.
crap, you say.
It was
May
good last
19th,
night while I watched that
1968,
Expedition
1
X. It was
year
in
after
France.
Stephen Michalak's close
At a
encounter,
chateau.
he and a friend returned to the site.
Just about center, a little north of center, the Geiger counter rose very, very dramatically. At that point, within an 18-inch section of the crack, they scooped out a whole, almost half a jar full of what appeared to be molten rock or molten metal of some sort. Subsequently, we found out what it was, but at that time it was unclear.
Exactly.
But it was quite radioactive.
According to Ed Barker, an analysis revealed that the material was an extremely pure grade of silver that is difficult to obtain.
I'm 100% believer
It had been coated with pitch blende ore, which
paranormal,
contains both
but I
uranium
also have
and
a
radium.
You know, a scientific
This
explanation
is what
too.
we found. 3 identical
So,
bars.
Even
So
though
do
I
I.
believe
Here,
it.
So do I.
at first
No
glance, to be silver alloy of some sort. They were obviously manufactured somehow. It was considerably radioactive. Now it's perfectly safe to handle.
This is one of the biggest mysteries and one of the biggest puzzles, and skeptics have pointed to this as the reason why the case should be discounted. Why would particles and metal fragments of this size and radioactivity have been missed by all previous investigators? And this is one mystery that we don't have definite answers to this day.
By someone.
Ed Barker believes the silver was
Can only
planted
fit
by
in two
someone who
different
may
ways,
have
huh?
wanted to lend credence to Stephen Michalak's story.
Planted on the site. Saying that, I do not believe Michalak had anything to do with this, but I do believe that it was planted.
I'd like to think that one day
You're so close.
we'll get a letter from the U.S. government and it'll say, we have the 2 craft in our hangar over here and we were experimenting with them at the time. Sorry. And I'd want to go and see them. And I'm sure Dad would too. And that would be great. What would be worse is to have this thing drag to a point and drag on where it's never explained.
Today, Stephen Michalak is 76 years old. He and his wife continue to live in Manitoba. Stephen still is not sure what it was he saw back in 1967. He says doctors had never been able to explain the burns on his chest or the mysterious symptoms which resembled radiation poisoning. Since no other explanation is forthcoming, Stephen Michalak is willing to entertain the notion, no matter how far-fetched, that he saw something not of this earth. When we return, allegations of murder and cover-up inside one of America's largest prisons for women. Frontera Prison, 45 miles south of Los Angeles, California, one of the largest women's penitentiaries in America. Frontera's maximum security wing houses some of California's most dangerous female offenders. Yet it is the alleged criminal activities of some guards and administrators that has shoved Frontera into the public spotlight. In recent years, former prison employees have made sensational allegations of widespread drug trafficking at the prison. They have tied these charges of corruption to a pair of seemingly isolated incidents. The disappearance and subsequent murder of a Frontera guard, Jesslyn Rich, in 1984, and the controversial death of an inmate named Terry Lucas 3 years later. In November of 1987, Lucas was found dead in Frontera's infirmary, where she was recovering from a cancer biopsy. To some, the incident appeared highly questionable. According to former Frontera guard Betty Thompson, an officer from another wing of the prison had approached Terry Lucas shortly before she died. The unauthorized visit apparently terrified the 25-year-old Lucas.
This was an inmate that came off as tough and mean and mouthy, but when she saw the officer walking down the hall, her whole demeanor changed. She was absolutely devastated by his presence.
Thompson claims that the officer was determined to unlock Terry Lucas's cell. He retreated only when Thompson threatened to report him.
You just can't come into an area where you're not allowed.
Most of the time, officers back officers. We don't back inmates. But in this particular instance, it was just almost automatic that I would stand in front of the door and not let him in there. After this officer left the area, I keyed the door and went in to talk to Terry Lucas in her cell. She said the officer scared her, and the reason he scared her
I can't
is because
see.
it was
You
to
keep
make her
holding
be
your hand
quiet.
there.
And she
I'll
tells
put
me
you out
that
the
she's
fucking
got
way.
information, she's got evidence, she knows who was involved in the disappearance of Jesslyn Rich.
I can tell you who, I can tell you what. I got all the stuff. I can give you all the evidence you need.
Betty Thompson was stunned by Lucas's revelation that she knew the fate of Jesslyn Rich, the Frontera guard who had disappeared under strange circumstances in 1984. Jesslyn Rich was a 35-year-old divorced mother of two. While working at Frontera, she had maintained a straight-A average in criminology classes at night school. At the time of her disappearance, Jesslyn had reportedly grown concerned about drug dealing inside Frontera.
For this year, sorry, you've got two
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
So we won't get some different ones.
Jesslyn Rich was
Diamond
last seen
Dart
on
as well.
November 11th, 1984, at a country
Some
western
decent
bar,
Diamond
where
Dart,
she
not
and a
cheap
friend,
shit.
Marilyn Alt, were joined by two male acquaintances.
In school.
See, that's your problem. You gotta get out more and live life. That's what it's all about there.
And all of a sudden, she sits very still and looks almost past me to the front door.
You okay?
And I look at her, and her eyes drew wide and fearful looking. But I didn't look to the door. I just, for some reason,
I
just
couldn't
didn't
see
turn
what I was
around.
doing.
And then she came back into the conversation.
I'll be right back. I'll use the ladies' room. Jesslyn, I'll keep you seat. Okay.
As she turns around the corner to go down the hallway to the
not right.
bathroom,
That's not right.
a gentleman
That's
appears
not
to
right.
me
That's
out of
not
the
right.
side of my eye,
That's not
going
right.
directly behind
That's not
her.
right. That's not right.
And that's the
not
last
right.
I see her. Ever.
Right. That's not right.
Jesslyn Rich literally vanished without a trace. Her family and friends launched an all-out search. To them, it
Oh,
seemed
over
harshly
here.
out of character for Jessalyn to
Could be
abandon
anywhere.
her children and scrap her career aspirations.
You never know.
But police investigators said they had no evidence to support the family's belief that Jessalyn had been kidnapped and possibly murdered.
They made light of it, called us just distraught relatives, suggested that my sister had just ran off on a fling with some person, which is totally absurd given her work record of only being late once and a 4.0 grade point average student. It just was unheard of.
Gary Muntz tore apart his sister's house, searching for clues the police might have overlooked.
Oh, it's just a sticky
When he
tree.
sifted through Jessalyn's trash, he found evidence that her knowledge of illegal activities at the prison had put her life in danger.
And inside, in the plastic bag, were many, many pieces of paper torn up very, very small. I picked up a few of these, and I could tell that it was my sister's writing or printing. And they were apparently notes or letters to a friend of hers, a co-worker, and I figured that I would take them home and sort them out later.
The letter had been written to another guard at Frontera. Scrawled on the margin of the last page was Jessalyn's haunting recital of an apparent threat she had received from a co-worker, that anyone interfering with
excuse
his
me?
drug activities would be taken care of.
I'm doing it back.
At the time, this letter was the only concrete evidence indicating that Jessalyn had met with foul play. 3 years later, the case had faded from public view. Then in 1987, the mystery was suddenly thrust back onto center stage when Terry Lucas told Betty Thompson she knew what happened to Jessalyn Rich.
Information about Jessalyn.
The morning after her extraordinary conversation with Lucas, Officer Thompson returned to the prison infirmary.
When I walked over to touch her, I noticed that Terry was dead. I went out of the cell and I went down to the nurse's station and I told them what I had seen and what I knew and the coldness of the room, that she was not covered, her eyes were open, her breakfast tray had not been touched, and the nurses told me they would take care of it.
Incredibly, Betty Thompson claims that the inmate's body remained in the cell for a full 3 days before the county coroner's office was called. According to Thompson, an official from the coroner's office was initially mystified by what he found. Betty claims there were blades of grass in Lucas's hair and multiple bruises on her face, ears, neck, and lower arms. Her right arm appeared to be broken.
He asked who killed this inmate, and he's saying that this inmate was murdered. He is saying that he sees evidence that she was suffocated with the pillow that had been under her arm that appeared to be broken.
Betty Thompson says that after the official met with high-level prison administrators in Lucas's cell, he had a sudden change of heart.
And he told me that we were not going to call it murder, and we were not going to say that she was laying there dead for 3 days. We were going to, in fact, say that she was actually laying there only 2 hours, and that the cause of death was actually complications due to diabetes.
Really, there?
Betty Thompson says as she refused to go along,
How many times do I have to tell you, Thompson? You can't put this information in your report. Now, you know what you're supposed to write. Just do it.
Thompson maintains that one of her superiors demanded that she change her report on Terry Lucas's death.
You are not leaving this institution until you do as you are told.
According to Thompson, she was subjected to threats and intimidation for 6 grueling
You
hours.
can kiss your career with the Department of Corrections.
There was one high administrator that even made the comment that the same thing that happened to Jessalyn Rich could easily happen to me. At that point in time, I broke down and cried.
Oh, it's okay, you do the rest of it. Oh no, you started
That's
now.
what this was all about, and I hadn't told anything what Terry Lucas had said. I hadn't told them anything about that part. And for him to bring up Jessalyn Rich and her disappearance, it said why Terry Lucas had died. It had definitely had something to do with that.
Right, is it? Nope.
Thompson says she finally gave in and signed a false report that was typed for her.
It's close.
But I added on the bottom that I had signed the document under duress and the document was untrue. To my knowledge, that document was ripped up. Another one was retyped saying the similar things that were on the first document and that my signature was forged.
Betty Thompson claims there were further attempts at intimidation. They began on her next shift with an anonymous phone call.
Infirmary Officer Thompson.
Thompson, if you don't learn how to do things in the proper manner, you'll end up dead alongside some muddy ditch.
The following day, Thompson had an unnerving encounter.
Have you been receiving threatening phone calls? What are you talking about? Oh, like you might be found dead in a ditch one night?
At this point in time, the hair on the back of my neck just stood straight up. I was absolutely petrified because I knew that she knew what they were saying to me and that she was part of whoever was threatening me.
Thompson says a menacing calls and harassment continued for 7 months. Finally, in June of 1988, the threats turned to violence. Betty Thompson immediately called the police, who arrived at her home moments later.
As I was upstairs filing a police report about the shooting, a phone call came in, and I picked up the phone. It was a male voice, and he said, "Next time we won't miss." The police officer saw my face and saw how upset I was. He included that in his report.
In 1990, the brewing scandal at Frontera was the subject of a series of front-page special reports in the Orange County Register. The articles supported insider accounts of drug dealing and corruption. That same year, Betty Thompson and 5 other guards testified before state Senate hearings on the alleged offenses at Frontera Prison. Prison officials declined to be interviewed for this story. However, Tip Kendall, spokesman for the California Department of Corrections, told an Unsolved Mysteries researcher, quote, "I'm not saying the things people are alleging didn't happen. There's just no evidence to support them." End quote. Next, thanks to our viewers, a woman framed by her stepfather has been reunited with a former deputy sheriff who came to her rescue when all else seemed lost. Recently, we brought you the poignant story of a woman named Kathy Williams Loving, who grew up in Chicago. In 1961, when she was 14 years old, Kathy fell prey to the abusive sexual advances of her stepfather, a detective with the Chicago Police.
Doing it when I'm freaking...
Kathy finally went to the authorities for help, but she was labeled incorrigible and detained, apparently because of her stepfather's influence.
Winding me up, you little shit.
4 months later, by order of a juvenile court, Kathy was remanded to a state training school. She was placed in the custody of a Cook County deputy sheriff to be transported. Kathy had no idea that this ride would become a remarkable turn of fortune.
When they put me in the back of that paddy wagon, I just started boo-hooing. I just got to it dawned on me then, nobody knows where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. You know, this has to be hell.
I didn't do anything wrong.
She sure did. Yeah, I've heard that story before.
Alone and scared to death, Kathy began to blurt out her story.
I'm here because my stepfather was messing with me.
Your stepfather?
Yes, he was messing with me.
Messing with you how?
Touching me the way a man touches a woman.
By the time they arrived at the reform school, the deputy was convinced that the system had made a terrible mistake. He offered to help Kathy, and she gave him the names of 2 friends, Louise Gordon and Maisie Bell. They brought the case to the attention of state social workers.
Who was that you said you wanted me to call?
Ultimately, Kathy was declared an emancipated minor and released from the reformatory. But Kathy never forgot the unknown deputy who lent a helping hand when no one else would.
If I could find him, I just want to say to him that many people reach out for help and many are refused help. But because of the fact that I reached out to him and he acknowledged me and gave me the help that I needed, he gave me my life.
On the night we last broadcast this story, Kathy Loving's search for her unknown benefactor finally came to an end when former Deputy Sheriff Fred Lyle of Chicago called our telecenter. Lyle said he had watched the story on Unsolved Mysteries and remembered the incident vividly. That evening, Fred Lyle and an overjoyed Kathy Loving spoke on the telephone and made plans to meet as soon as possible. Today, Kathy lives in a well-appointed suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. On July 18, 1992, Kathy and several friends gathered to await the arrival of Fred Lyle and one of his daughters. For Kathy, it was a special occasion, which afforded her the opportunity to finally say thank you.
Right, I will call it now.
The first thing out my mouth was I said, I love you. I said, I have been waiting all these years to tell you that I love you, and I wanted to say thank you.
Okay. Yes, so I will see you guys later on. So take care of yourselves. Bye, everybody. Later, everybody.